At least 11 people were killed in the Gaza Strip on Tuesday as a result of Israeli shelling, despite the ceasefire resolution adopted by the United Nations Security Council. Rescue teams in Malawi have found the wreckage of the plane that was carrying Vice President Saulos de Lima, but reported that there were no survivors. And the representative of Venezuela before the UN, Samuel Moncada, presented himself before the International Court of Justice to reaffirm his country's position regarding the Guayana Esequiba dispute. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. At least 11 people were killed in the Gaza Strip on Tuesday as a result of Israeli shelling, despite the ceasefire resolution adopted by the United Nations Security Council. In this way, the Gaza Health Ministry confirmed that 8 of the victims were killed after an Israeli bombardment of an apartment in the city of Gaza, while the occupation army also targeted a house in Deir al-Balah in the center of the Palestinian enclave, claiming the lives of 3 civilians. The attacks persist amid reports from the Palestinian media on Hamas accepting the ceasefire resolution adopted by the United Nations Security Council, as was informed by Sami Abu Sudi, senior official of the resistance movement. And as we were mentioning, the UN Security Council adopted a resolution for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip presented by the United States. More than 6 months after the beginning of the Israeli genocide, the United Nations approved for the first time a resolution calling for a ceasefire and stressing the urgent need to allow extensive vital aid for the famine which has begun to spread throughout Gaza. During a session of the UN Security Council, 14 members approved the resolution demanding the return of 130 hostages kidnapped in Israel and those held in Gaza. In this context, the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas issued a statement welcoming the resolution adopted by the UN Security Council. The movement praised the fact that the text calls for a permanent ceasefire and the complete withdrawal of Israeli troops, as well as the exchange of prisoners. The UN proposal also includes the reconstruction of the destroyed areas in the Gaza Strip, the return of the displaced to their places of residence, and the rejection of any demographic change, alteration of or reduction of the territory of the Gaza Strip, as well as the provision of the necessary assistance to the Palestinians. In this regard, Hamas also stressed its readiness to enter into indirect negotiations in order to materialize the UN resolution. And the United Nations suspended humanitarian operations in the U.S. pier off the Gaza coast following a deadly Israeli operation. In this regard, the UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric described as a standard procedure the suspension of humanitarian operations at the U.S. pier in the aftermath of the Israeli operation. The official stressed that the agency must resume humanitarian operations as soon as possible. In this sense, the UN Food Program had previously announced that it would call off operations at the dock pending a thorough assessment of the security situation. The move comes after Tel Aviv regime forces conducted an incursion into the Gaza Strip using vehicles identified as humanitarian aid to reach hostages, killing over 250 Palestinians in the process.
While the World Food Program colleagues tell us that we are temporarily pausing operations at the floating dock until a thorough assessment of the security situation is conducted to ensure the safety of our staff and our partners.
In Palestine, in the occupied West Bank, a general strike is held to denounce the murder of 4 young people at the hands of the Israeli army. Stores and public entities in the West Bank remained closed on Tuesday in response to the call by President Mahmoud Abbas for a work stoppage. The measure of force follows the murder on Monday night of 4 youth in the town of Kfar Nima, where 8 others were wounded after being shot by Israeli soldiers besieging the place. In parallel to its genocidal war in Gaza, Israel has launched an offensive in the occupied West Bank, where 538 Palestinians, including 133 minors, have been killed since October 7th. And in Israel, recent polls show that 62% of the population intending to vote would not cast their votes for any political party that supports Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In this regard, another result of the polls showed that 56% support the call for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and the release of hostages from both states. The survey further revealed that 75% of the respondents did not favor the government's policies regarding evacuations on the border with Gaza and Lebanon. These polls also show that 56% of those polled support the U.S. government's proposal for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and the release of the hostages. This compared to the 24% who opposed the second phase initiative regarding a total cessation of hostilities and the withdrawal of occupation forces. For their part, 72% of the surveyed participants said they strongly disagree with the Israeli government treatment of the hostages' families and the border evacuations. Saudi Arabia decided on Monday not to renew the petrodollar agreement that expired on June 9th, ending a nearly 50-year relationship with the United States. The agreement, signed in 1974 with former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, involved the creation of an agreement for Saudi oil exports to be paid for in U.S. dollars. As a result of Monday's decision, Saudi Arabia can now sell oil and other goods in currencies such as euro, yen, and yuan instead of exclusively in the U.S. dollar. The change could accelerate the de-dollarization process while challenging the dominance of the petrodollar system that has been in place since the United States stopped its currency convertibility to gold in the year 1972. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Rescue teams in Malawi have found the wreckage of a plane that was carrying Vice President Saulos Chilima, but reported that there were no survivors. The plane had left the capital Lilongwe on Monday, but failed to reach its destination amid bad weather. The remains of the military aircraft were located a day later in a mountainous area in the north of the country. President Lazarus Chakwera, who had first ordered immediate search and rescue operations, later announced in a televised address that the plane had been found completely destroyed and with no survivors. 7 passengers, including 51-year-old Chilima and a former First Lady, along with 3 military crew members, were on board.
And I am deeply saddened and sorry to inform you all that it has turned out to be a terrible tragedy. The search and rescue team has found the aircraft near a hill in the Chikangawa forest, and they have found it completely destroyed with no survivors, as all passengers on board were killed on impact.
In Russia, in order to keep the personnel training and equipment, the Defense Ministry announced the second phase of military exercises of non-strategic nuclear forces. The armed forces of Belarus joined this second stage, which is intended to ensure the defense of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of both countries. A statement released by the Russian ministry specified that soldiers from the two nations would be trained in the coordination of the use of tactical nuclear weapons. Earlier, the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko stressed that the joint military exercises with Russia are being carried out to train, prepare, and be ready, since the world is dangerous and unstable. And in Russia, BRICS foreign ministers continue their second day of expanded ministerial council session. The meeting is attended by 10 foreign ministers of the bloc, including Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, and Iran. At the meeting, they discussed current issues of the world agenda, regional issues, as well as the interaction between the BRICS countries within the framework of the partnership and other platforms. The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs led the meeting and assured that the main task is the collective search for answers to the common challenges faced by the international community. And during the first meeting of foreign ministers of the BRICS and BRICS Plus member countries that has already started, during his speech at the BRICS event, the Russian top diplomat Sergei Lavrov emphasized the steady growth of circle of the BRICS partners.
We have a special responsibility to pay attention to foreign policy coordination, first of all in the UN and its Security Council, the BRICS, the SCO, the G20, the APEC, and other multilateral platforms. Our position with our Chinese friends is seen more and more positively by the leading countries of the world. Our circle of partners is constantly growing. The circle of those who want to cooperate with both the BRICS and the SCO is increasing.
Moreover, Lavrov said that the BRICS Foreign Ministers Summit meeting was working to improve the international monetary and financial system.
The Russian chairmanship is moving ahead at a good pace. Some 70 events have already taken place and more are still to come. We have noted the constructive participation of all partners in them. Work has started on key Russian initiatives in the transport sector, the creation of a contact group on climate and sustainable development, a working group on nuclear medicine, and a medical association. Work is also being actively done on implementing the decisions of last year's Johannesburg Summit, in particular with regard to improving the international monetary and financial systems and to developing a national currency settlement platform for mutual trade.
Also in this context, the government of Russia and Venezuela signed a memorandum of cooperation in the fight against U.S. sanctions. The document was signed by the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and his Venezuelan counterpart Ivan Gil within the framework of the meeting of the BRICS foreign ministers in the Russian city of Nizhny Novgorod. The head of the Russian diplomacy emphasized the good relations between Moscow and Caracas, highlighting the effective cooperation in the fields of energy and medicine, while specifying that the agreement will contribute even more to the common work between both countries. For his part, he reiterated Venezuela's interest in becoming a full member of the group of emerging economies BRICS, a position that Lavrov supported. In other news, on Monday, main left-wing parties of France announced the creation of a popular front against fascism and the far right. The meeting was attended by members of La France Insoumise and Socialist, Green and Communist parties. According to the statement issued by these four groups, they will support single candidates in the first round of the legislative elections. In this sense, the parties indicated that their candidates will carry a disruptive program detailing the measures to be taken in the first 100 days of the new Popular Front government. The decision comes after President Emmanuel Macron called for early legislative elections scheduled for June 30th and July 7th, respectively. Now we have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back from the South. The representative of Venezuela before the UN, Samuel Moncada, presented himself before the International Court of Justice to reaffirm his country's position regarding the Guayana Esequiba dispute. In this sense, the Venezuelan diplomat stated that they are at the ICJ following instructions by President Nicolás Maduro and the popular mandate. He stated that they are there to defend the Guayana Esequiba and to reaffirm that the Geneva Agreement is the international framework under which the dispute with Guyana needs to be solved. In the year 2018, Guyana unilaterally decided to approach the ICJ regarding the issue, breaching the Geneva Agreement's mandate to always proceed with the agreement of both parts. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, the vice president of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello, led a debate on political organizations with members of the Great Patriotic Pole. Cabello pointed out that this party is a great political force and called it the vanguard of the Bolivarian Revolution with presence in all municipalities and parishes of Venezuela. During his speech, Cabello also rejected the destabilization attempts orchestrated by the extreme right wing and its aggressions against the sovereignty of the country.
What is certain is that for this election of July 28th, we have one candidate, our brother Nicolás Maduro, president of the party, supported by 13 political organizations, grouped in what we call the Great Patriotic Pole. Where the traditional leftist parties of Venezuela are together with other groups and social movements, a great political force. We have the president, only one candidate, and they have 9 candidates.
In this context, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela described as extraordinary the revision days of the 1x10 electoral machinery held on Sunday throughout the national territory in preparation for the presidential elections of July 28th. In a meeting headed by the Vice President of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello, it was detailed that the 1x10 machinery became the most in tune with the proposals of the national government during 25 years of revolution. And we go now to Argentina, where more than 80 resignations from Javier Milei's cabinet have been registered in the last 6 months as a result of internal conflicts. According to government sources, a total of 82 officials, including ministers, secretaries, undersecretaries, and directors, have so far resigned from their posts. The resignations are related to internal conflicts and scandals linked to the distribution of food for soup kitchens and overpaid salaries with funds coming from international organizations. According to experts, the resignations are an unequivocal sign of instability within Milei's administration and of lack of expertise in political management. The areas with the highest number of departures are the former ministries of Education, Labor, Culture, and Women, Gender, and Diversity. We stay in Argentina as local athletes expressed concern about how President Javier Milei's austerity policies are affecting the sports movement. In this way, the best South American swimmer in 2023, Argentine swimmer Macarena Ceballos, already classified to the Olympic Games of Paris 2024, highlighted that in the sports facilities where she is preparing, there are not the necessary conditions to materialize the success of her training program. On the other hand, Diógenes de Urquiza, director of the National Institute for High Performance in Sports, expressed that 2024, despite being the Olympic year, they have the same budget as in 2023, with an inflation of almost 300% year-on-year as part of a severe fiscal adjustment plan of the current administration.
It's 3 hours, 3.5 hours a day, that I'm wasting this week to go train at the German Gymnastics Society in Villa Ballester. It's something that happens to us when water heater pump breaks.
We are aware that in a country like Argentina today, where people cannot afford to eat, there are other priorities than sports. We had to work with what we had. We worked judiciously. We agreed that the priority this year was the Olympic Games.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belen de los Santos. Thank you for watching.